Hello BookStack. Today we discuss the first and second chapters of the book How to Read a Book. So we're starting here with chapter 1, and he really starts the book out with who this book is written for, and it's for those who are readers and those who want to become better readers, which I hope we all are. Again, this is kind of the view of the channels to make everyone better readers so that we're better at gaining knowledge and insight and information from the books that we read. And it's really for people who get the majority of their information from books. He talks about how the media today, back then as well as today, probably even more so today, inundates us with facts. And it's to the point where it seems to make thinking unnecessary. It says that we're given all the facts so that we can make up our own mind, and we're far from actually making up our own mind. We are just given packaged information and packaged views, and then whenever anyone talks about that subject or that idea, we just kind of regurgitate back the view of the person that we were listening to or watching, and that's not really what we want to do. We want to be thinkers, and we want to take the information that's provided to us, and we want to really think our way through it to make sure it's logical and make sure that we truly, really agree with the information that's being presented. In the next part, he talks about how people often think of listening and reading as passive activities, that you're just kind of sitting back and reading, or you're sitting back and just listening to someone talk, and it couldn't be further from the truth. Reading as well as listening is very active. And he gives the analogy, which I really like, of a pitcher and a catcher, where the pitcher is preparing the pitch, he's thinking about where he's going to throw it, he's throwing the ball, and the catcher is then getting in position, getting ready, making sure he's prepared to receive the ball. And in fact, the only truly passive part of all of the whole interaction is the ball itself, and the ball represents the information that's being presented. Again, authors use words to communicate information. We read those words to receive the information, and the words are really the only thing that just kind of sitting there passive, sitting on a page. Again, you don't get any information or any learning from a book by just sitting on your shelf. You have to read it, and you have to participate with the author in order to receive the information. Using the baseball analogy actually brings up an interesting thing about different reading skills and reading levels. Different people are better readers than others, but also it's a thing about a skill is you can get better with time. And so as you play baseball or you play any other sport, just as though you're reading a book, in the same way, you are getting better the more you do it and the more active you are at it. We then get to the next part of reading for information versus reading for understanding. Now, when you're reading for information, you're reading just to gather facts and just really kind of getting into a work that is already kind of based on something you already know and that you're already familiar with. You're just getting more information about that particular thing. But now when you read for understanding, you might be in a wholly new area that you're not familiar with at all, and that's where you begin to really grow and to stretch your mind. And you may get into an area where you don't understand what you're reading at first blush. When you first come across it, it may not make sense to you, but that's okay. That's when you really dig in, and that's when you really start to grow and expand your horizons and get into new areas of ideas and thoughts. And it's really at the point where you're pulling yourself up by your bootstraps to elevate your mind to a point of understanding something that's completely new. And that's what we're truly after. We're truly after growing and exercising your mind to reach new heights of understanding and learning. We want to get to a place where we're moving from where we understand less to where we understand more. And it's the skilled reading of challenging books that challenges our perceptions and challenges our mind to get into new areas of learning. We then get into the next section where he talks about learning by instruction versus learning by discovery. And I think this is a really cool section because we're not in a classroom setting. We're not in a place where we're being spoon-fed information. We're kind of discovering this information for ourselves as we go along. Now, there's unaided discovery he talks about, and aided discovery. Aided discovery, you have a teacher who is there present with you, walking you through the information. And unaided discovery, you have an absent teacher, someone who's not there with you, such as a book. So the teacher wrote the book, sends it out into the world, we pick it up, and now we're assimilating the information with an absent teacher. So we're experiencing what he calls in the book unaided discovery. I like he says that to be informed is to know the facts. To be enlightened is to know why these are the facts and how those facts fit in with other facts. And this is what I like about attempting or moving towards being well-read. because when we receive new information, we can put it in the paradigm in relation to all the other information that we've read. And so it's not necessarily knowing what an author is saying, but why he's saying it. And this leads to the quote by Montaigne, which I would really like to read here. Montaigne speaks of an abecedarian ignorance that precedes knowledge, and a doctoral ignorance that comes after it. The first is an ignorance of those not knowing their ABCs who cannot read. The second is the ignorance of those who have misread many books. We do not want to be those who have read too widely, but not well. The Greeks had a word for those who were too bookish and too poorly read: sophomores. Being widely read is not the same as being well read. You don't necessarily just want to read a bunch of books, but you really want to dig down in those books and assimilate the information into your mind and into your brain so that it can help you form a more well-rounded worldview. We want to think about what we've read and what we've seen on our own and really think about it and process it to help us grow. And I just noticed in college you really don't get a lot of that. You get a lot of instruction in aided discovery, but rarely are you taught how to discover things unaided. And that's why we read textbooks. Again, I've said this in videos in the past. You receive most of your information packaged in a textbook, and rarely do you read the actual work by the actual author. So you're not taught how to go to the actual person, read their information, break it down, think about it, and form your own opinions. Your opinions are handed to you by someone who wrote a textbook, and that's not what we're necessarily doing here. We're going straight to the source and learning these things on our own. We're trying to train our minds and get back to the era of unaided discovery, where we go directly to the masters and read them and hear from them ourselves and go through the process of processing that information and growing and training our minds. We're continuing our education through books, and that's why I decided to start with this one, because we are learning how to be good at that and develop that skill. And this ends the first part of the book, chapter 1. Now we begin to get into chapter 2, where he starts talking about the levels of reading. Now there are 4 levels of reading, but before he gets to that, he starts talking about setting goals as a reader. Is our goal to be informed? Is it to be entertained? Is it to gain understanding? Because the goal that we have as a reader is going to determine the skills and the techniques we use to get that out of the book. Because reading, like we said before, is learning from an absent teacher. We can only do that successfully if we have the right skills. Now we start talking about the first level of reading, which is elementary reading. And this is literally the most basic level of reading you could possibly have. It's what you learn when you first start learning how to read, and it's just recognizing words on a page. What are the words and what do they mean? That's elementary level. That's the first level of reading. The second level of reading is inspectional reading. Now what makes this special is its constraint of time, because inspectional reading is done very rapidly. You're going to systematically skim the book to figure out what the book is about. You're going to find its structure. You're going to find out what the parts of the book are and what the author is trying to accomplish. Many good readers neglect this level of reading, and I have to admit, before, I was a person who didn't quite understand all the intricacies of inspectional reading. Now, I did some of it subconsciously. I would read the back of the book, I would glance at the table of contents, but scanning systematically is something that's kind of new to me, and it's really taken my reading to another level. Because when you're reading inspectionally, you're figuring out what the book is about, so that when you read the different parts, you're reading them in context of the whole. Again, the author puts in an idea that he's trying to accomplish throughout the whole book, and when you learn that, you can put the different pieces and parts into context. Readers who do not perform this task are trying to figure out what the book is about as they're reading it, and that's not very helpful and it's not very effective, because you're not able to put those different pieces and parts into the overall narrative that the author is writing. The third level of reading is analytical reading, and the author spends a lot of time here to make sure we truly understand what analytical reading is. It's some of the best reading you can do. It's when you get complete understanding of what the author's trying to do, or as close as you can come to complete understanding. It's when you're asking the best questions, and analytical reading is primarily reading for the sake of understanding. In this level of reading, you're going to ask many organized questions. And I love the quote that he has there by Francis Bacon, where he talks about some books are meant to be tasted, others to be swallowed, and still some are meant to be chewed and digested. Now, the art of chewing and digesting a book is the art of reading analytically. Now, the fourth and highest level of reading is syntopical reading. And another word for this could be comparative reading, because what you're doing is reading a bunch of different books by different authors on the same central idea and theme. What you're doing by reading many books is putting them in relation to one another. And what's interesting here is you're able to actually perform an analysis and come to conclusions that may not be in any one of the books individually. Now, this concludes the first 2 chapters of the book, and I think it really sets us up for the rest of the book as he gets into the levels of reading, and the first part really hinges on us understanding these first 2 chapters. Now, next week we're going to discuss chapters 3, 4, and 5. Those complete part 1 of the book. I believe it ends on page 55, and we're going to discuss those next Saturday. Now, this is Saturday morning, 3 p.m. this afternoon. We're going to have another Zoom meeting, and all the information is going to be below. The links are going to be below. It's going to be on the Zoom app just like it was last week, and that's going to be 3 p.m. You can find information on Facebook. Again, my name's Joshua Hansen. You can find it there. You can also follow us on Twitter at MyBookStack. The information will be there as well. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.